Woo, woo, okay. We're
Let me.
live.
I know that was cool, wasn't it? The countdown. How are you doing, Adam?
I am very well. It's interesting times, but I'm very happy to be with our community here. And I'm so happy that we have Movement for Modern Life, and we have an opportunity to practice together online with such high quality classes and such high quality students. So
Okay.
that's why I'm excited in the midst of lots of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's right. There's a ton of worry going on. By the way, welcome, Adam Hocke. Thank,
Hello.
thank you for joining. I'm Kat. This is Adam,
Hello, hello.
and this is our first movers, first of a few, I hope.
Yeah.
So that we can address alignment issues. But since we put this on, obviously the whole CV19 thing blew up, and I've been extraordinarily stressed and worried about it. And I know a few other people have. I'm looking a bit worried. Sorry.
Yeah.
um, how are you doing, Adam?
I am okay. I'm okay.
Good,
I am trying
good,
to stick with my practice and
good.
remember when I get a little bit anxious, a little bit nutty, that I can get back in my body with very simple things. And it's powerful. It's very
Mm,
powerful. Yoga
yeah,
works. Yoga's here for us. And it's been used by people dealing with far worse than we're dealing with at the moment. So we're okay.
indeed.
We'll be okay.
We will be okay. Thank you. Can we start with a little something to
Yeah.
make me
Yeah.
more okay? Because I've had quite a hard day, and I imagine there's a couple of people who might have had a hard day too.
Certainly. I think it'll be good because we're going to be chatting and we'll get a little heady, that we start by getting in the body in a very simple way. We'll make it as simple as possible. So just ensure that you're seated in a way that's upright, that's alert, but not totally rigid or
Okay.
military or held. Okay. All right.
Okay.
I just have to note all the winning ribbons back there. Easily, easily
I
distracted.
Has a
Okay.
logo, right?
Okay.
Exciting.
Good
Good
doggies.
dog.
Okay. So you're upright. Sorry, I get easily distracted, which is why I need yoga. Okay. This is why I need yoga. Okay, I get distracted. All right. So you're upright. And I think hands on body is really good. So as you sit and close your eyes or look downward, place your hands somewhere on your lower abdomen, just wherever you feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Make sure your hands are offering kindness. So the hands can be the hands that you would give to touch someone you love, whoever that may be. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's an animal, but it's the touch that you would give them. And we're a little starved of touch right now. So receive the touch and simply breathe into your hands. And just be really curious and in wonder at our capacity to move and breathe as you breathe into your hands. One more here. And then you can slide the hands up to the sides of your rib cage and really feel around until you feel bone. And you make a connection with your arms. Okay, because sometimes it can be a bit hard to hold arms up here. So find a placement that you can work with. And then breathe out into your hands. Let's just do that a couple more times. Again, very curious and in awe and wonder at this miracle of life. And then finally, slide your hands up to your upper chest. And we're not going to breathe like straight up. We want sort of breathe up and out. So from here, you can breathe up and out into your hands. There's a little width as well as height. And just let that rise and fall a couple times. And then arms can just fall into a placement that's relaxed. Eyes are still closed, you're looking down. And I thought we'd do the self-compassion check-in. So first, again, just watch breath, be with breath. And whatever it is that is causing you the most stress or anxiety or suffering at the moment, and maybe it's not even the biggest thing, maybe it's just something you feel like you can address. Feel that in your body and in your breath. And say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. Everybody has these moments. It's part of being human. And today, can I be kind to myself? And just feel that on your own for a couple moments, not only the reality of what you're feeling in terms of suffering and anxiety, but how you can be kind to yourself, what you need to give yourself to be kind. And then slowly come back. Okay. I think these little check-ins are powerful in their simplicity. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're here, we're together, and we got yoga.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And we got lots of questions, don't we, Kat?
I know, this is so cool. So I'm going to be looking at my little phone to remind us what the questions are. But I think we've also done a little list of the ones which were written on the movers group beforehand.
Yep.
So it would be really lovely to go through that. And I know we're joined by some people. So hi,
Hey,
it's
everybody.
so oh, you know what? That's so lovely that you've come along and yeah, you're with us. It's really, really cool because it just makes us feel less alone, right? Okay, Adam.
All right.
Oops. That's me trying to do tech.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go through the questions in the order that you would like to deal with them.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think because we looked at them and there's some themes, a lot of common questions.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Oh, hi from
So
Switzerland. Okay. Hello, Switzerland. So where should we start with, Kat? What do you think is the most
we're sitting cross-legged because I'm sitting cross-legged now on the floor. Maybe there are some other people who are sitting cross-legged.
Mm-hmm.
And we have lovely Diane Earle, who, thank you very much for posting this morning on the Movers group. And Diane, your sister Carol is a new member. Hi, Carol. And she finds it hard to sit cross-legged. And this is something that so many of us deal with.
Okay, so I can relate to this because I remember being in yoga classes when I just started and thinking like, how on earth is everyone sitting cross-legged and not wanting to scream and curse? Because it's hard, and most of us probably haven't sat cross-legged since we were in very early days of primary school. And those were happy days when we just have our little milk and nap, but a lot of time has passed. So sitting cross-legged. I think we should break this up into what we can do just to deal with what's being asked for in the class, and how you might work on this going forward if you want to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to sit cross-legged because you're just sitting, sitting in a class, you're going to meditate or you're doing things with your shoulders, you're not really concerned with what's going on with the legs, I would say maybe you should kneel. Maybe that might be an option.
So I'm going to sit a bit further back. I have my mat.
Yep.
So by kneeling, first thing I'm doing, right, is I'm getting a bolster. Yes? You mean kneeling on?
Yeah. So we can start adding props, but even without props. I mean, you can sit cross-legged or you can kneel. And like, I'm fine with either. And sometimes it's the going to kneeling. Like if I'm going to meditate, like 95% of the time I'm going to kneel. But that has its own demands. So we'll get, we can get to that. So sometimes kneeling is best. And then you can add props to either cross-legged or kneeling. So you can sit on something underneath the bony bit of your bum. So you can sit on a bolster or you can sit on a cushion, and you can do that for kneeling or cross-legged. And in general, we want to try to get the knees a little lower than the hips. And that's because once the knees get a little higher than the hips, and you'll probably see this more in cross-legged, but once knees are a little higher than the hips or getting towards that direction, it pulls on the back in a little bit that you just end up rounding backwards. Yeah. So if you sit cross-legged, and you're probably quite good at this, but
I've got open hips. Yeah. But the thing is, I've seen loads of folks in class who kind of
they're there.
That's very normal.
Yes, and then that'll make you round backwards. Then it'll be struggling to sit upright, and that will affect. Okay, so we've heard that kneeling is worse from Carol. So we'll get there. So we're just going through all these options. I love this instant feedback. I need this in the yoga room. So, all right. So we can do kneeling or we can do cross-legged, and we can add a bit of height underneath butt or not. So those are your sort of first stops. Then for some people, it is the pull on the knee or the pull on the hip that is the struggle in sitting cross-legged. And that might even be exacerbated in kneeling because there's just sort of more pressure on the knee. So you can do things in cross-legged in addition to sitting on some height. You can put support underneath the outer thigh and knee to hold you up. You can also put folded blankets between the thigh and the calf, sort of behind the knee.
Look at that.
Look at all these things you can do. All these props.
The calf and the outer knee.
Yes.
So we're kind of propping up that area.
Yes. And then if your legs were full, so you can sort of prop up, and then you can get between, so sometimes in kneeling or in cross-legged, when the calf and the thigh are coming closer together and you're sort of closing off the back of the knee, that sort of pressure can be problematic. So you can, so just sort of summarize, you can add height to the butt, you can add support to the outer knee, you can add cushioning between the calf and thigh. Okay. And that would be most of what I would do to address the hip part of it as you sit, if you're just gonna sit. You can also just not have the legs crossed. So you could, I have students who have a bad knee or both bad knees, or it's just hard, and they'll just sit a little bit wide-legged, and they'll just let the legs just go out to whatever is comfortable. Just let them open up if your goal is just sitting. And if it becomes the back, holding up the back that is an issue, you can have your back against a wall, or you can have a brick between the spine and the wall. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Someone has written that they can't hear us.
Oh.
So let's make sure that that's just an individual problem and not everybody.
Can everyone else say if you can hear us? Can you just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us? That would be great.
Just silence, just silence. So we'll carry on until told otherwise.
It might be that it's your settings. It might be a question of turning up on the right hand side. There's a little thingy on a
all right,
on
they can hear us. They can hear us. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kneeling.
All right. So then, all right. So if it's just sitting, we would do all those proppings, including the wall, including have the legs out. And then if none of that works, if it's just sitting, I would consider not sitting on the floor and sit in a chair. If it's just about sitting and getting through that moment of class. And, you know, like we can, if we were there in person, there would maybe other things we could address, but I think try that stuff.
Yeah.
Then if it's about doing a seated posture, like a seated cross-legged posture, pretty much the same things. You can work on doing hip circles and things. You can do all the mobility stuff, which is probably in a million classes that we have. I know I have a hips class with a bunch of circling and working on rotation and all that stuff that mobilizes the hip will in time make it at least a little easier to sit on the floor. And also, if you're not used to sitting on the floor, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and just like do it for a little bit, and when it's becoming like not sustainable, stop. But you'll have to get through some of that discomfort.
Yep, that sounds reasonable. Okay, well, I'm going to tag in some hip classes to the feet. That will be a thing. Okay, I hope that helps with the hips. Should we go on to question number 2?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, should we do the wrists or should we do the downward dog?
I think it'll all feed in together.
It all feeds in.
All right. So let's talk down dog. All right. So we have like Kathy Hilton had a question, Heidi Dixon had a question, Racky had a question. So we're going to try to just talk about things you can do to help, let's just say, first, the upper body feel a little better in down dog. Hand, wrist, elbow, shoulder. Because at the end of the day, that's a chain. That's a chain throughout the body that will help us bear weight, and we want to make sure we do it well. All right, so let's just try to give practical advice and things to try. Because I saw like Kathy was having trouble with weight going into her elbow and weight not sitting well in her hands, and Racky just wanted to hear me talk about it all. So with your hands, I would say first stop, free yourself from any shackles of like where you think your hands have to be. And play around with width. Okay, so starting about shoulder width, but full permission to bring your hands wider. Okay, so you can play around with that until you feel strong and weight feels like it's sustainably going through your hands. All right, so first stop, play around with width of hands.
Yeah.
Second stop, turn around, play around with turn of hand.
Interesting.
So I know that some people get really rigid about where index fingers point or where the crease in the wrist points. And I think
I was told index finger point forward.
And that might be totally right for you in a circumstance. It also might be totally wrong.
Right.
Because like we're going to talk about alignment throughout this. There is no absolute alignment that will suit everybody. Just hear that. There is no absolute alignment that will suit everybody. I think there are like alignments that will suit a lot of people in most circumstances, but there's always variables. All right, so hands do not have to point straight forward. Index fingers do not have to point straight forward. They might turn a little bit in. They might turn a little bit out. Okay, so you can play around with that landmark, the turn of the hand.
Like that.
Yeah, any direction, any direction. Okay. And what the hand turn will do is affect the way the weight goes into the wrist. And let's hold on wrist for a second because there's a whole protocol we can talk about. The turn of the hand will affect how weight goes into the wrist, but it'll also affect the rotation of the whole arm and what's going on at the elbow. Because this is this whole chain of things rotating up. So if you turn the hand, it's going to turn the way the lower arm turns, and that's going to change the way the upper arm turns. We won't get lost in rotations, but I'll give you another landmark to play around with to help you bear weight well in your hands for down dog. And that's the inner elbow. So not the knobby bit, the inside bit. So the inner elbow. Sometimes people say the eye of the elbow, which sounds really profound. So we have the inner elbow. The inner elbow can turn in a variety of different ways. For most people, I would say turn the inner elbow to face the direction of the thumbs. Maybe you can do down dog and we'll get a good angle.
I was just wondering if that makes
we'll have a good angle here.
Yeah, okay. So you need to take off a layer.
Do it carefully. Okay.
I know it.
There's things revealed and you look exactly the same.
I have many layers of that. Okay, right.
So, all right. So yeah, we can see clear. So while you back up just a little bit, even if your legs are off your mat, you might be in the fireplace a little bit. All right, even a little further backwards if you can. All right, there we go. All right, so we see the direction of her thumbs and her inner elbow. For many people, this might not be you, Kat, but the inner elbow can turn in the direction of the thumb. So you see that landmark? Yeah, you can see how it can turn. She's very mobile here, which might not be you. But the inner elbow, for most people, you could consider turning it to face the direction of the thumb. For some people who are very mobile, that's exactly the wrong thing to do because you'll just do too much of it. And that might actually be you, Kat. But I would say the inner elbow, for most people, you can play around with turning it to face the direction of the thumb and see how that helps you feel in your elbow, your shoulders, your wrist, and your hand. Okay, so I think we've killed that. So we can come back. Down dog looks good though. Down dog looks good. So that's just a variable because I want I don't have the answers. I have ideas for you to play around with. And this you have to take ownership of your own body and your practice and how you feel at certain bits. Okay, so we can turn the hand, we can widen the hand, we can turn the elbow. And then I think a big concern, especially if you're doing vinyasa yoga with a lot of down dog, is where your shoulders are in space. We'll say the back of your shoulders, where they are in space. A lot of people have this goal in down dog of getting their chest towards the floor, head towards the floor.
Okay.
Which can
I'm going to do a side on for this. I'm feeling a side on coming up.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can angle that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you can, there we go. Yeah. And they're slamming their chest towards the floor, which can feel like a really nice stretch, particularly across the front of the chest and into the armpits and the back of the arm and so forth. So that can be a goal, but I don't think that's a good goal if you're doing a lot of a down dog for vinyasa. So I would say, Kat, bring your shoulders a tiny bit forward in space, just like an inch, just a little inch. That's it. That's it. So you're just a little less slamming your chest towards the floor, and you can push a little bit more down into your arms and have a little bit more strength. And you might feel like you're in plank if you bring the shoulders an inch forward, but actually you'll still be in a beautiful down dog. So I think you can come back. So that, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. You can turn the hands, you can widen the hands, you can turn the elbow. In general, bring your shoulders a tiny bit forward in space, and bonus points if you can widen the shoulder blades apart from each other, or just have this feeling of width and breadth across your upper back. And that will create this really powerful chain from hand up to the shoulder. And additionally, if you get that sort of push and get the sort of power coming up through your whole torso into your core, you're really well supported instead of just hanging down into wrist and elbow and shoulder, which might be nice for 1 minute of a passive stretch, particularly if you have a rope wall or someone pulling on you, but not if you're continuously trying to weight bear. So this is that sort of, I think, the hand, elbow, wrist, shoulder thing. But the wrist health in general for down dog, for plank, and for chaturanga, and then into the strength, because we had questions from Carrie and also Heidi about chaturanga. So in general, the brief thing for wrists is make sure weight is not going into like this part of hand, particularly not towards the pink. I'm like mirroring. This is crazy. All right. I'm trying my best. Not trying to go to the pinky side of hand. You're trying to get sort of more into this mound between thumb and index finger. So if you think of, there we are, the palm as a circle, we want to be in the top part of the circle, and particularly here where weight goes down. So that's like weight goes down into that, but you want to make sure you can push back. So if you can have a good prop is sometimes you have a little bit of blanket just before your if you're doing down dog. If you had a little bit of blanket and you did down like folded blanket, and you had that sort of behind your hands, so your hands are at the top of the mat, blanket's just one step behind, and you just make sure.
I see. So it's raised.
Yeah, your hand is not on the blanket.
Okay.
But your wrists, as you come into down dog, so you can come up into down dog, your wrists are trying to avoid touching the blanket. So there's just a tiny bit of lift and a little bit of push down into the hand to facilitate that. So that just gives a little bit like a reminder that, oh, I actually have to actively use my hand and push down. I have to actively use my forearm muscles to bring a little bit of muscular support around the wrist. I don't just flop down. You can have a little sense of like grip and pull without like it being a death claw, just a little sense of like a little bit of pull. Essentially, we want to make sure that this side of our forearm and wrist is working and this side isn't overtaxed. Because all day at a computer, this side's overtaxed.
Okay. Can you just repeat that? So which side is working?
We want to make sure that there's a little bit of strength on the underside.
On the under.
And a little bit of, we want to continuously open and not overtax this top side, because it's overtaxed from being at a computer or phone or holding a bicycle or whatever we do all day. So there's loads of stuff. And here's the thing, like weight bearing in the wrist is not easy. It's not easy. And particularly for the angles of things like plank, which we just talked about recently, which, sneak preview of things to come. The angle of plank that's sort of not like, I can't do it, like that sort of 90-degree angle that we do in plank. Yeah. It's tough. And you think like, all right, it's hard for me to bear weight in my wrists. How do I develop that? You develop that by bearing weight in your wrists, but not by doing a full plank, a full chaturanga, a full arm balance when you feel you don't have the strength to sustain that. So you have to do that incrementally. So if you're struggling to bearing weight on your wrists and plank, side plank, and other things in chaturanga, get those freaking knees down. You have no business. You have no business doing plank, chaturanga with your knees up.
You're so funny, Adam. Can I just say, like, get those freaking knees down.
Well,
there's no other teacher who's going to say that. That's brilliant. Gold.
well, this is
You have no business with your knees up.
like if you go to the gym and you're gonna do whatever, you're on some crazy machine and you set it for 100 kgs. And you do that and you think, my God, that really hurt my shoulder. That really hurt my wrist doing that weight. Are you going to go back tomorrow and think, I should do that weight again? Or should I, learn how to be really strong and feel good at a lower weight and then incrementally work it up?
Yeah. Okay.
So, set the kg back to 50 or 25, and you do that by lowering your knees down so you have less weight going on in your hands. And do that for your plank, do that for your side plank, do that for your chaturanga. I think, so we were talking, Heidi and Carrie both wanted to know, like, how do I get stronger? How do I get stronger? And I think they're particularly talking about chaturanga. Do chaturanga with your knees down. And learn to do it really well. In general, think of it as a tricep press where you're going forward. I'm sure there's a gazillion people who've done some version of a tutorial on the site or talked about chaturanga in different ways. So bring your knees down. Maybe it's just one knee. You can have one knee up, one knee down, and alternate. You can lower not all the way down with your knees up. And then bring your knees down, and you just sort of build it incrementally. So that's like, if you want to do plank, if you want to do chaturanga, just don't try to do the full one all the time and then wonder what went wrong. Like, bring your knees down, develop it incrementally. And sometimes you just have to do it as a drill. Warm up for it. Like, do 3 tricep presses with your knees down. Don't be super concerned about elbows going in or out. Just find the one that feels best in your hand, wrist, and shoulder. Eventually, if you're going to do a chaturanga into up dog, you'll want the elbows tracking backward, and that's more of an ideal position, but doesn't work for everyone. And then stages of chaturanga, like roll down. Like, if you want to learn this, roll down, but don't do knees, chest, chin. And I hope this is not like shocking or controversial, because this is a funny thing that does get shocking or controversial. Knees, chest, chin is totally fine, but it doesn't teach you anything about chaturanga. Okay? It doesn't. So, I usually tell people, like, roll down like a normal person. So you just drop your knees and then roll down incrementally, front of thighs, waist, ribs, and then all of you. And as you do that, maybe your elbows track backwards. But you just roll down like a normal person. Knees, chest, chin will only confuse you in trying to learn chaturanga. It's just a different thing. So if you want to learn chaturanga, learn to roll down, then do chaturanga with your knees down, which is just, I'm at the gym doing a tricep press with my knees down. That's it. Don't overcomplicate it. Think more forward than straight down. And then eventually you do knees up. And maybe you don't do it all the time. And all of this is going to impact wrists. So just make sure your wrists can bear weight. So the last thing I want to say about wrists is that often, like, we think, like, all right, how do I warm up the wrists? And all we do is like passive stretches. Which can have its place. But I would say, like, I did one, and I think I need to do it better, but I did one on wrists and shoulders. Like, a little bit of massage is really good into both sides. So you sort of wake up the tissue. We did that with a massage ball or a tennis ball on my wrists and shoulders.
I'm going to link to that when we've done.
Cool. So you can do some massage. You can do passive stretches. I would do circles without, like, everything going wild, because that's just one of those things outside of like a car dealership. It's really fun. But if we want to be specific, nothing moves except the wrist.
Right.
And then maybe you start adding a little, like, you hold one of your many hoarded tins of chickpeas or whatever you have. we can repurpose. into just a little bit of weight for mobilizing the wrist. And then when you do that thing, those things that people do where you're just on all fours and you're turning your hands in different directions and trying to stretch, I would say do that. Like if you're all on your mat on hands and knees, you can just set your hands in any direction. Fingers point forward. You can do this. Do this with us. So just a little bit further back, and just start. Yeah, and then I would just rock weight in and out of the hands, and just do that in a variety of directions. Yep. But as you do it, make sure weight is hitting that thumb and index finger area. And then eventually I would turn the hands just as far back as feels nice for you without impacting the elbow or feeling odd. Stay there. And then sort of go into the place where you feel like, all right, I'm getting maximal stretch. And in that position, it'll be probably tipping your bum more backwards without your hand lifting.
Oh, yeah.
All right. But then that's not the it. So we think, all right, now I'm working on flexibility. I got to add strength. So I'll add strength. And as I said, I want to strengthen the forearm, which is the inside of the forearm, which is sort of chronically weak. I will push down into the hand. And in this position, because I want to engage the side of the palm side of the forearm, I'll act like I want to drag the mat towards the computer, so it's in front of you, towards the front.
Oh, okay.
Like you're pulling the mat forward. Do you see how that's sort of starting to turn on things?
Yeah, it hurts.
It hurts. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's much more relaxing not doing that. I'll tell you
but it's not going to do much.
Okay. Thank you for making that harder, Adam.
Well, that's what I'm here for, making everything more difficult.
That's what I can slouch out in my yoga class. Cheers.
So the story is, like, move your wrist, but make sure you're moving just your wrist. Mobilize it, stretch it, massage it. Do strength drills, just like that. Can you bear weight in a variety of different positions, but not just passively resist a little bit back? Just push your hand into the floor. And I think that's a start.
Yeah. Oh, good. Kathy says, beautiful tip, rolling down for chaturanga. Makes it more accessible. Pauline Spenceley, great.
Cool.
Great. Kathy liked the hands, elbow, and shoulder position played within downward dog. Excellent.
All right.
Hitting the there, Adam.
Okay, good. So what else we got?
Cool. Let us go and have a look.
I think you're. What was that?
Do we want to go on to feet?
Oh yes, feet. How could I forget the feet in down dog? How could I? There's so much. I got really excited about the upper body. Okay, feet in down dog. Like the hands, play around with the width. Okay, and let's not get totally concerned with why, but just play around with the width and see if that makes a more sustainable, happier, or efficient situation for the stretch of the back of your legs, or the lengthening or the perceived lengthening of the spine. So just play around with the width. And even if you feel like there's not a problem, play around with the width. Make it a different experience. So play around with width of your feet. You'll have a different experience of down dog, which might be like, oh, this solves problems, or it's just different.
What about Heidi, who has noticed a stiffness in her ankles when she runs since she has started doing a yoga practice, which is quite funny because yoga is always meant to make us all feel flexible, and here she is, she's never felt stiffer.
So I mean, there's so many variables here because I don't know about running and I don't know what's going on with her. But let's sort of think about the ankle demand. We'll limit it to down dog. All right. So in down dog, you're trying to create this sort of deep V of flexion at the foot relative to the shin. The top of your foot is going towards the top of your shin in an angle that you don't encounter in life, and maybe don't even need in life unless you're squatting a lot. Okay, but we do need to squat, so it's it's something to work on. So if pushing into that angle is hard for Heidi, maybe Maybe that is just causing irritation if she's overdoing it. So you can play around with whatever's going on with that angle. Maybe you walk the feet a little bit further out or a little further in, and changing the angles is always helpful. If she's only feeling it when she's running, I don't know, but we can address the angle. So you can change the angle of the foot. You can also just not fully straighten the leg. You can bend the legs, which takes the demand off the calf and hamstring. And then just watch what goes on also with squatting and how low you go, because then you're making that same sort of angle. In your squat, you're making the same sort of angle in chair pose, which is just another version of a squat. So just watch out for those. If we're relating the ankle tension to the down dog, it might also be from standing balance. It could also even be like the back foot in some of the standing poses goes into quite a weird, strong angle. So all of that, I mean, it's going to have an impact. And if you're not used to it, might affect the other activities that you have that place demands on the ankle. So like the wrist, I would say circle the sucker, like circle your ankle without moving everything else around. Warm it up that way. And I do things like I'll get into, if you can do this on the mat, it'll help explain it. If you can just get into one leg is in squat, the other leg sort of kneeling.
Okay, so we've got one leg's, let's go a bit further back.
Yeah. So yeah, one leg squat, one leg's kneeling. Yes. And then, so that's good. And if you weren't happy like that, you could have your butt on a prop, or you could just have that leg that's not the leg that's not in a squat back like a lunge. All right. So, but essentially you want one leg in a squat, other leg in a comfortable position, and you in a sustainable position.
I see.
All right. So then you have the leg that's in a squat. You can, like we did with the wrists, just try to keep the whole foot on the floor, and then knee in the squat leg can go far forward of the ankle without the heel lifting, and then you just practice being in that position, weight bearing, but it's not both legs at a time.
I see. So you can change it up.
Yeah. So then you just practicing the half squat and that deep ankle flexion. And yeah, you can rock and roll with it. You can just stay. You can push into the ball of the foot. You can push into the heel. You can try to lift your toes, but you warm up the ankle. You're also warming up the squat, but for our purposes here, you're warming up the ankle to be able to do that deep shape.
Yeah. That's cool.
So that's something I've been putting into my practice really a lot. And you can do the, and you can also do things if it's ankle mobility. You can, in addition to doing the circles of the ankle, when you're doing things like Sphinx or Cobra or even Up Dog, just really make sure you're on the top of the foot. So the foot, instead of just being all like scrunched up on the mat, like really flattens out. So you go into the absolute reverse. So you're just working on these things. And again, try to make it not just passive, push back a little bit. And feel free also to just massage your feet like you're doing now. You can use a massage ball, which I definitely have in some practice or another. So just be kind to your feet, massage, and then you can even take that massage up the ankle and into the lower leg. So there's a lot. Yeah. And I think Raki probably or someone was saying that we do have a blog all about feet that I contributed to and other people did. So you can play around with all of that. And I think someone did some other foot practices.
Yeah, we've got Catherine's done. It's like an hour long, all about.
Good for Kath. Thank God for Catherine. She does the hard work that we don't want to do. Okay.
That's right. Cool. Hope that helps a bit, Heidi. Right, we've got a few more questions and not much time.
Okay.
So where do we want to go? We have got balance as a question. I'm fairly useless at balance, and I'm told that this is age-related. However, I'm not ready to accept that.
Okay.
Adam, what do you suggest?
Okay, and this is from Mama, isn't it?
How'd you guess?
Okay, so balance is hard. And we're going to think, all right, what is making it hard?
Mm.
So if it's like standing on one leg, which is probably what we're talking about, right? For things like half moon or warrior three or tree pose or dancer pose, what makes it hard? It might be the foot, the toes, the ankle, and up the leg. So we start by doing mobility drills for the ankle, weight bearing for the ankle, just like we just did. Just make sure that's alive. Do all the massage for the foot to make sure the foot is in your awareness and you can feel all the subtlety. Do a lot of toe mobility, toe spreading, toe lifting and movement. Because they're going to be what helps you balance. And just remember, if you're doing a standing balance, if there is movement at toe and ankle and foot, you're not falling apart. Your foot's doing its job. It's communicating to the floor. You just want to make sure that you're participating in that communication. And that you're noticing which side you're rolling to, and you're compensating by pushing back the other way so you find center. So it might be the foot, okay? And then up the chain, I think the next important stop, and I definitely, on my balance on a brick challenge, address the...
Yeah, it was a hard one.
Yeah, it's hard. The outer hip. So the outer hip is your stabilizer. So you want to make sure in standing balances, say you're doing tree pose, you're standing on your right leg and your left leg is up and bent. You want to make sure, can you stand in tree pose?
I don't know. I'm not going to balance either. I'm going to be headless.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
So you're standing on what? Yeah. So the standing leg, if you just let the standing leg hip really sway out to the side, which is often what happens.
Oh, you spotted it. That's my secret.
Yeah, then you're just, if the standing leg hip just sort of sways out to the side, you're just sort of stacking bones, and that's not going to be sustainable. So the standing leg hip wants to squeeze a little bit in, and that's the outer hip stability. So that's your next chain, okay? And then
go from that to that.
Yes. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then so you can come back. The next little bit of that is all right, what's going on in the core? So to turn on the core, I would say the lifted leg, particularly, let's just stick with tree, squeezes, that foot squeezes into the inner thigh and inner thigh presses back. If it's not tree, you just want to make sure there's a little squeeze and lift into inner leg, into pelvic floor, just to tell core, like, turn on, turn on. So there's that. There's ankle, there's the outer hip, there's core. Now, if we're talking about older population, targeted core strengthening will help with balance. Okay? We can't say this like with certainty for everybody, but particularly for older populations, if you make sure that you've done some dedicated core strengthening, front abdominals, side abdominals, twisty abdominals, and so on, this will help you make sure you haven't lost the strength to stabilize your spine and your whole body from falling over. So there's that. So you might want to do just like very pure like planks with one leg up and like that sort of stuff. And I'll just say my mother's 71, just did a plank challenge for whatever, I don't know why, but she decided to do a plank challenge and make sure she had enough strength to hold it for a minute or two.
A minute or two of plank.
Not on her hands, on her forearms. On her forearms.
Okay, so that's a good one. That is important.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of those lovely over 70s who are now sort of at home, not sure what to do, we're going to do, all of us, a plank challenge on forearms up to a minute.
But don't start with a minute. Please, God, don't start with a minute if you haven't ever done it. Just sort of see where you are. If you haven't done plank in a long time, do it for 15 seconds and see what happens. And see what happens the next day. All right, so there's all those things to think about, sort of personal alignment wise. And then if you're struggling, do it at the wall.
Yeah.
Do it with a chair. Maybe you don't touch the chair, but it's there.
Yeah.
So sometimes that little moral support is really helpful. And then we had a question, why can I balance on one leg but not the other? Well, because you're not symmetrical. And, a lifetime of hanging into one hip when you stand or hanging into one hip when you sit or whatever will create asymmetries in the body, muscular asymmetries, through all the things that stabilize you. So that's why we're not symmetrical. It's perfectly normal to not be able to balance on one leg versus the other. So you pretend like you could be a symmetrical being and you work on both, but don't get too fussed if it's hard. And remember, at the end of the day, like being able to do dance or pose is not a life skill. Not falling over if you sort of half trip on a step when you're going up the stairs somewhere is a life skill.
Yeah. Good point. I like that.
So do all that stuff, and then I have a balance practice. It's hard. It's on a brick, but just take the brick away and add support. So if you're not doing it to like make yourself supercharged in balancing, start with a chair or a wall, then take the chair or wall away. Don't worry about standing on a brick if you can't stand on the floor, and just sort of play around with it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Are you ready for, should we just do one more question, Adam? What do you think?
Let's talk about the transitions thing. I think that will take time, and then I can answer the other two very quickly.
Yay.
All right. So alternatives. So this is Laura, right? Laura Natalie. Alternatives for getting up and down on the mat quickly. So when there's knee and hip limitation. And I assume, and if you're on, Laura, you can tell me if this is about stepping forward and back in vinyasas.
Stepping forward and back question. That was my impression.
So we'll carry on with that. And if you're here and want more, you can tell us. First, everybody know stepping forward and back, but particularly stepping forward. So say you're in down dog, you're stepping one leg forward into a lunge or into warrior two. It's hard.
Yes.
It's hard for a million reasons, which we don't need to go into. So let's think, all right, if that is hard for me, let me think of this in two ways. First way, I just want to get through the class without being annoyed, frustrated, or in pain, or just like behind everybody else. To do that, I would say, just bring your knees down, step forward, and then lift up into whatever you're going to do. And as you bring your knees down and you like say you brought your knees down, you want to get the right foot forward, step it forward. If it doesn't go forward, use a hand to pull it forward or swing it from the outside and around rather than just straight through.
Right.
So there's that. Find the easy way or just skip it. Like just skip the going back to down dog. Do your right leg warrior two while everyone else is doing whatever they do. Skip it. And then when they're ready, you do it. You can do like a standing forward fold as they do it, and then you step your left foot forward and do your warrior two.
That's radical.
But just like, come on, it's just yoga. Just yoga. So if it's like you just want to get through the class, do that stuff. Skip it or bring your knees down. Change, like grab the foot. Most people will not get the foot all the way forward and through, and it's hard. And it can make you get really behind in the class. So if you're really behind, just skip it, or do a slower class, or do a class that doesn't do all those transitions. If you just want to get through the class and this is annoying you, say you like, okay, I like the class. I want to learn how to do that thing. I would say try things like having both hands on bricks or objects, stable objects of the same size in down dog. So you have more space to step a leg through.
That's a good idea. So hands on the bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just have more space. Or you come up onto tented fingers, either one or both hands on tented fingers. Yeah. Temporarily as you step a foot through.
Yeah. Yeah. So it would look like something like you've got your hands there.
Yeah.
Instead of flat.
Yeah.
I like that. And then that gives you more space.
Gives you more space. And then you can also, instead of stepping straight through, you can step around. So the right foot, comes around, and then it comes right, and you just replace your where your hand is. Yeah, just bring it in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
She said it was a game-changing tip. Okay, there we go. From somebody. So you can swing it from the outside. It's a start. It's like, if I just want to get through the class, let me find the easiest way possible that it's not going to exacerbate any problem or just annoy me. And then you can train things like hands, and then know after that it is just pure hip flexor strength. It is pure spinal mobility.
Right.
It is pure shoulder mobility. It is pure, like, how long are your freaking arms compared to the length of your torso and leg to step the leg through.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it's a game of genes, isn't it? Like, good genes for yoga is like long monkey arms.
So I think that's what we'll say on that. Just like find a way to get it through. Drop knees. I think one of my early classes, my very early beginner series, we had some stuff on the lunge step through, perhaps. So just find a way, and then it's another thing to train. Start with hands on bricks. Start just bringing that knee in and out very, very closely. I find sometimes raising the heel of the foot that's on the ground, say you're going into three-legged dog before you step through. The foot that's on the floor, get the heel a little higher, then you have more room to step through. And then maybe if it's not about the stepping through, we'll save for another time, like what you can do if you don't want to do chaturanga, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay. Part 2.
All right. And then I'll give like the quickest tips in the world for inversions.
Okay.
For Laurel. If you've never done,
I'm going to do what everyone always does when inversions come along. I'm going to step.
It's the bathroom break time. It's the water time. All right. So very quick for Laurel. Building confidence for headstand, forearm stand, and so on. I would say start not with headstand, because that's the hardest thing to do in terms of weight bearing on your neck. Don't do that. Don't start with headstand. It's maybe the easiest thing to accomplish, but don't start with it. So discipline. Handstand and forearm stand I would start with. Train these things separately. So these things. Hopping. Just hopping one leg up and down. Not trying to go up. Just train hopping. So that's a separate thing to train. Second thing to train, hopping at the wall, and maybe you get to the wall, but you're not trying to balance away from the wall. Train that as a separate thing. Then train, I get up at the wall, but now I bring a foot away from the wall. And then you go to practicing in the center of the room, which is essentially first practicing falling.
Yeah.
And then you practice balancing. But that's just separate those, try those things incrementally, report back, and then we can see what helps.
But we also have some good news for Laurel, which is we're going to do a summertime inversions challenge, which is going to be all about this. So it's going to be about feel the strength, feel the fear, because it's the fear which is often the thing.
Yeah.
And we'll do it all together. We might be able to persuade Adam to join us to get our fear-busting tips, because it is a scary thing.
It is. And just think, remember, not a life skill, just something to work on for a while. And don't like spend your entire practice working on it, because it's not worth it. I think that's enough for now. And we have more for another time. So we'll leave you wanting more.
That's fabulous. Adam, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
It's been so fun.
It's so fun. Yeah, it really is. What I love about this conversation is it's so liberating. It's like, you know, when you get really stuck that, okay, teacher says 4 fingers forward. Teacher says you have to step forward like that. It's like, you know what? You can also not step forward. You can just transition via a forward fold. You know, that's what I love. It's the permission to play with yoga and use it as our own thing. And I guess especially now when so many of us are feeling worried, we're feeling sad, it's like, let's try and bespoke this practice to how we need to feel better. And it's a present moment practice. For me, it's a, you know what, handstand, that's a thing in the future. What's going on now? And it's like just a sort of little exploration into how we are, how we feel, and yeah, feeling a little bit better, but just being in the now is really kind of what it's about, and not sort of focusing on this future version of us.
So this is fantastic. So I'm so glad we have the practices. Thank you, Kat, for making it all happen. And everyone keep practicing, and let us know what you need to keep you practicing.
Yes, let us know.
Okay.
Adam, thank you very, very much. All right, everybody. Night, night.
Good night.